In this part, I want to talk about the limitations when we talk about the spatial movement of a camera. And I hope this here isn't looking like any limitations, even if it is a little bit slow here based on screen capture and on the running the movie here at the same time. Sorry for that. But the truth is, what I want to show you here is, of course, where you have advantages, spatial freedom, so to say, and where that ends, because it's not endless. It's always what you have prepared, what you have put in is finally what you can use. And let's hop over to Cinema 4D and check out where are the limitations. So after we have talked already about the timing and the framing, I want to talk about the spatial movement. And of course, when you have set up a scene with a lot of information inside of it, the spatial movement can be much greater than when you have only just a bare minimum of information in a scene. And bare minimum means here, for example, when I go here with the camera this way and I can see here in the background and there wouldn't be anything, then we have already our first limitation. Please have a look to this top view here. When I take a look here, you can see the different timings here of the camera. One is pretty much half in speed and the other one is double in length. That is the temporary or the time freedom here. And I want to show you, of course, also the spatial one. Let's have a look here to camera number 4. This is this one here. And it has a complete different movement here. And I move this here maybe a little bit into that area, or we just flip it. And I hope you can see that now. I had really a fun time to check out what is the best expression here. And this camera here had a lot of movement, and it was just too much for the music that Dale plays. And camera and the speed of the music should fit together. You can't just make it fast and everything when the music is very slow. Sometimes it might fit, but my taste here was that I like this shot here, but it won't really support the music. And so I said, okay, I have to try it again. And you can see here, this is a long list of cameras, and we fold this in because there's a lot of time that it went into finally. And I ended up here with this camera, and you see here when I say long or long, even a typo in it, this was the short version. And then I noticed, oh, I need more time because the song is really, really slow. It's not something that needs a fast pacing. And so I decided to just double the length, and so I had my freedom. But as you can see, we had a lot of cameras here, and each camera has a different path, has a different perspective, and that helps, of course, to find finally exactly the movement that you want to have. And the movement, in the way it is, even if it looks maybe boring, it goes away, and to that it has some kind of rhythm in it, it has some kind of feeling to in it. And it's not always the fast pacing and pang, pang, so to say, what you might need in some motion graphics. But sometimes it needs also to be just slow and adapted to the music. It should support the music. It shouldn't be against it. And so to find your language in the camera is very important. And I think there's no better tool available than 3D and camera mapping to find your camera language, so to say, your cinematography, to say that word again. Okay, this one here is now about the limitations, and let's have a look. We go here to the default camera, and even from that perspective it might not look really bad here. And of course here I have a little bit CG feeling to it, but in the moment it moves and we get some motion blur in it, it looks already different. So there's no motion here inside this camera. Let's move here out for a moment, and you can see here I have found, of course, the first limitation. I have not the building here in the way the whole parking garage was here. It's much bigger, and that is the first limitation. Let's go here a little bit higher so you can see it's only planes here, just single planes, always to the bare minimum nearly, not really fleshed out, so we have everything here in it. And it gets even worse when you take a look here to this crown on that building. It's just a little cylinder, not even built completely. And here it is pretty distorted, but from the camera point of view, we have here exactly what we needed. And here is one of the major themes in camera mapping. We prepare models mostly only for our needs, not that we can see it from all sides like this one here, or from this side. It doesn't work, and I didn't want to have the camera there. Have a look to this area here. It looks just wrong, and it looks just right from here. So there is a certain amount of movement that I have prepared. I could give this one here now a geometry to compensate for the missing perspective in it. And then, based on my work that I create the geometry back, the perspective or the projection would be fine, and then I can go further. But that takes also a lot of work. So there is a limitation in the preparation here, of course. Even if I can see everything, you have limitations in the redimensionalization, if that is a word, because every camera mapping has its limitations somewhere. And that has to do with, for example, areas like this. I can't go around if I haven't put the information there. And then we have the background. The background is everything that you can see in the moment the buildings won't cover the background. That sounds maybe a little bit funny, but I can't define it in a better way. So here we don't need anything for the background. I could move the camera here in a nice way, and no need for background here. But in a moment I go here a little bit further, you can see there's a little gap and I need information there. If I don't have that information, I have a limitation here. And when I want to go higher, I need this in the background. And of course, always it should have the same light direction in it, and the sun comes always, for all buildings in this scene at least, from the same direction. That would be a limitation where you have to have your eye on. And of course, the next one is then here in the windows. And for that, I have to go really out of that, and I have always here these areas where I put just a little bit texture inside. And this texture here is only for my reflection. And I need this, of course, only after I have done my camera work here. In the moment I have fixed my camera and say, okay, this is all I need, then I can determine, of course, what is finally needed in terms of reflection, what is really seen from me in terms of reflection. Just to put a huge 360, 180 degree panorama around because we can, that's maybe possible, but sometimes I would think when we want to go really close to the windows, we need, of course, there are a lot of pixels. And this here was exactly the picture that I shot from, I would think here, this position right up. And so I try to find here the position where it looks right in the reflections again. And that's all I have here in terms of reflection. It's another limitation, of course. If you go a little bit further and you have then everything black in the windows, it won't work. So you have to think about in terms of camera projection and how complete your scene is. And to make a whole city is not that simple, of course. So you have to think, where is maybe the border where you can produce easily information, and that is, of course, with background images and with reflections. And everything else in the foreground is maybe a little bit more work. I see there is the most limitation in it. So set up your scene, make a little sketch what you can see, and shoot, of course, when you are on location as much as possible, even if you think you will never see it. But to go maybe up into a parking lot like this one, and when you follow the whole series from this parking lot, I have shot the civic center. So it belongs all together, and just climbing up just for the fun and shoot down, because I wasn't certain if I want to go higher with the camera. And so I try to shoot from this parking building just down. So I get here all the data inside just because I can, and it was only 10 minutes or so. There is, of course, also a border how much you can shoot, but the more you have, the better you are off, and so on. So I think this gives already a nice little info what you need, and you can see here for the background, it's just a cube, a little bit distorted, and sometimes it's not really a lot that you need to fill the gaps. And filling the gaps gives you more freedom, gives you more options, and you can move the camera more freely. That we always try to be with all of that on the bare minimum to go to the next scene to get everything done. That's of course clear, and I think you got my point here. I don't want to repeat myself. Thanks for listening. See you in the next part.